All right, welcome in and welcome back. The Outsider Sports Football Podcast, Tuesday, October 3rd. Yeah, we're already into October. We're a month into the season. Corey Jason, Dylan Mel, John Pauline, I'm Ryan Balliot, all those guys with me. We've got a great show for you. We're going to talk about what's wrong with a couple teams, what's right with a couple teams. Obviously, our Outsiders of the week, our look ahead at the games we're excited for, looking ahead to week 5 already. We're already into that time where bye weeks are a thing. Some teams have that early bye, that unfortunate early bye. So make sure you double check your fantasy lineups too to make sure those starters like Keenan Allen and Ken Walker are not in your lineup. And before we get to Corey's favorite 60 seconds of the week, his favorite segment, a couple of reminders. If you're a fan of the show, show your support. Follow us on Spotify, or if you're watching over on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Ring that bell for notifications for when the shows go live. Like the shows. It helps us a lot. Join us down in the comments. Leave your takes, your opinions, and we'll get a conversation started down there. But yeah, Colt Report Weekly. Things were looking bleak for my Colts this week, down at one point 20-0 at halftime against the Rams. And then Anthony Richardson woke up. The God amongst men. He rallied the troops, forced overtime, tied at 23, and then some guy named Puka Nacua, we just couldn't stop him. No one's been able to stop him all season long. They lose in overtime, but a couple of key starters coming back, including this guy behind me, Jonathan Taylor, reported to be coming back to practice this week.
Practice? What about games?
Well, we're talking about practice right now. We'll talk about games when it's time. Shane Steichen said he wouldn't rule him out, though, for this upcoming week against the Titans, but
Well, it's
said,
Jonathan Taylor that's ruling Jonathan Taylor out.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see, but I don't know. From Steichen's comments, I think the tone shift a little bit. I think Taylor saw what this offense can be, especially with a guy like his talent out there with AR. We'll see. Yeah.
If he does play this week, though, is he getting a lot of carries?
I don't know. Zach
ease him
Moss
in?
has been pretty good.
I promise you that they will run him into the dirt and let him go. I promise you he will not be on any workload management.
Truer words have never been spoken.
Maybe keep JT out of your fantasy items for another week or two, but let's get started with, listen, there was a big reason why I wanted to make sure I had Corey and John both on this show. Dylan, I don't know where you stand with the Justin Fields debate, but obviously we know the Bears are not a good football team, but how are they this bad? They were the worst team in football last year. It looked like they were going to finally win. They blow a 21-point lead to Denver. You look at the box score, Fields' stat line didn't look too bad, but obviously the one interception came at a very inopportune time. And then his rushing, only 4 attempts, 25 yards. They're not playing to his strengths. I put a lot of blame on the coaching staff, failing to develop him. Chase Claypool, obviously not in the good graces with the staff either. Following their week 3 loss, he was asked, do you believe the coaches are putting you in the best position to succeed, utilizing your talents? He just straight up said no. Then he was a healthy and active for week 4, asked to stay home, away from the team. Now the report is they're going to try and trade him, something as little as a 5th or 6th round pick, after sending the 32nd overall pick to Pittsburgh for Claypool. So that looks like a marriage ready for divorce any day now. So, I mean, that's the question is the Bears right now, they have the top 2 picks in the draft because they have Carolina's first rounder. The only 2 winless teams are the Bears and the Panthers right now. I don't know if it stays that way the rest of the season, but is there any room for optimism for Chicago this year, but certainly moving forward?
Yeah, of course. Optimism is that the season does eventually have an ending point. The season does end eventually. And you have the Cubs, and that's the only other baseball team to look forward to, but the season does end. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Whether you stick with Fields another year or you get Caleb Williams, the year there is an ending point to the suffering for a few months. You get to take a break. You knew coming into this season what Justin Fields was like. Yeah, he showed you glimpses last year, but also they haven't won since Twitter became X. They haven't won in about 12 months, a full calendar year. October 2022 is the last Bears win. There's just a lot of things going on with that team that it's hard to blame one person. Maybe George Halas for bringing the team into the league in the first place. It's just been years and years of disappointment for the Bears. It's a far cry from the 85 team. That Super Bowl shuffle really, really put a curse on that team. Maybe Justin Fields can be good, though, somewhere else. And I think that actually might be the case. Change of scenery, coaching staff that can actually use him. You know, we've seen him. He's pretty elite with the legs, but outside of that, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, you kind of spoke towards my opinion on this. Listen, let's be quite frank. Justin Fields is a below average passer. We all knew this going into it, but what makes him dynamic is his run ability and the ineptitude from this organization to play into that the way that the Baltimore Ravens do with Lamar Jackson. I mean, look what we've seen in the red zone. They've been the most efficient team so far this season. Why? Designed run packages for Lamar Jackson. Here he has 4 rushing touchdowns this year, which is more than he had the last 2 years. You brought in a new OC. It's working wonders. Matt Eberflus, a defensive-minded guy, and at that, he's not a good head coach. He's going to be the guy that bites the bullet on this year, and he should. This Chicago Bears team, though, it's not just Eberflus. When's the last time this team's developed a quarterback? Ever. You talk about the 85 Bears. They didn't even have the story of that team wasn't great quarterback. It was an amazing defense that gave up 13 points that postseason. So the Chicago Bears, we talk about Caleb Williams, you're talking about him in the pre-show. There's teams that he doesn't want to go to. The Chicago Bears are on that list. It's the Bears and the Cardinals. Why? Because those teams suck at developing quarterbacks and don't put them in good spots. So is Justin Fields a bust? Is he good? I don't know. I don't think we've seen him get a fair shake. I don't think he's some game-changing player. A talent like Justin Herbert, despite bad coaching, he still showed that. So he's not at that level, but could he be a winner somewhere? Absolutely. But, like Marcus Mariota in Tennessee, got to the playoffs a couple times. Is Justin Fields really worse than Marcus Mariota was? Probably not. Better organization.
I'm just worried at this point if the Bears have already ruined what Justin Fields could be at this point. Because, I mean, they already leaned away from his strength in running. Like, he's an elite runner, and he'll win you a few games that way, but he's below average passer. And for some reason, this season, the coaching staff, the team is just so set on him being a pocket passer that they're completely abandoning the run with him. And if they kept it up the whole season, you wonder by the time they turn away, like, he might just be done. You wonder if they just ruin him. I mean, you never know. Maybe a few years down the line, he has a resurgence like Geno Smith did with the Seahawks. At this point, I think the only way to do with salvage Justin Fields right now is just you got to lean into his running ability because I don't think he can pass. But the problem with that, like running only gets you so far in this league, and eventually, if you run and like running quarterbacks get injured, eventually those hits add up. And to win in the NFL, you need to be able to pass. And when it just comes down to the thing, like Justin Fields just cannot pass in the moments that he needs to pass. I mean, the interception. He's having a great game through the pick, lost the game. And even if Justin Fields was good and they leaned in the running game with him, I just don't think he's that quarterback that's going to get you over the hump.
Yeah, but that Justin Fields had a great day before then, and they could have kicked a field goal, and Eberflus decided not to. So that's coaching taking them out of a winning situation. I'd like to see Justin Fields in Atlanta as of right now. Desmond Ritter's ass, but Atlanta's got the roster. They've got players. You can't tell me Justin Fields isn't better than Desmond Ridder. And with Arthur Smith, I just mentioned Marcus Mariota on the Titans. Who was the OC? Arthur Smith. This is something that could be made work. If the Falcons wanted to go get a trade for Fields and the Bears wanted to go all in on tanking, maybe that's something that could be done.
I really like that. And
that's what I was going to segue with. That's what I was thinking too, Dylan. That seems like just a match made in heaven for the style of offense Arthur Smith wants to run. Pun intended, running. I mean, Bijan, Algier, then you add Fields to that mix.
He doesn't use his players though. Like even Bijan isn't being used to the best of Bijan's ability yet. I mean, Drake London, who? Kyle Pitts. Kyle
Pitts has been utilized. Kyle Pitts has the second farthest average depth of target for a tight end this year. The problem is only 58% of the balls thrown his way have been catchable. Just for reference, the standard at his position is 85 to 90%. So Desmond Ritter's been the problem there.
He is pretty buns, isn't he?
Yeah, it might be the only one. Well, I could think of Mac Jones too, but let's take this opportunity. Daniel Jones, he's not too good either. The Giants were a team that had, unlike the Bears, had expectations Corey with a big sigh right there, standing out in front of. If the watchers on YouTube can't tell, that is MetLife Stadium behind Corey.
No,
And,
it is my own personal hell.
The sign has just been engulfed in flames at this point because once again the NFL decided to put the Jets and Giants on primetime games on back-to-back nights. And the Jets, they put on a show. They made it competitive. Giants, not so much. And we'll get to see them on primetime again in 2 weeks against the Bills. Thanks for that, Roger.
That one might be flexed out.
Don't forget they have another one after that. They
There's
play the
more?
Packers on. They play the Packers on Monday Night Football.
Dear
That
God.
one, that one
December.
won't. That one won't get flexed.
Maybe it'll be
but
better because Barkley will be back.
I don't think they can flex Monday night games.
Yeah, I don't think so.
This
But
coffee's
that's-
going to be Irish by the end of the season if I have to keep watching the Giants.
Isn't Mac Jones like 1-12 in primetime games?
No, Daniel,
Daniel
Jones.
Jones.
is.
Daniel
Daniel
Jones.
Jones.
Oh,
is. Mac
Daniel
Jones
Jones.
probably
Daniel
isn't
Jones.
much better.
He
But
doesn't get enough
Daniel
prime
Jones is
time.
hitting
Yeah.
below 100 in primetime games.
Listen, the Giants, unlike the Bears, the Giants sort of had expectations. They had a big resurgent season last year with Brian Dable in year one. They make trade for Darren Waller. Isaiah Simmons before this season comes over from Arizona, supposed to be another chess piece for Wink Martindale on that defense. And then, I mean, you saw it. The poor tackling last night was on full display and just an ineptitude on offense. So, Corey, take it away, man. What's going on?
My suicide?
This is
I
your
mean-
13th reason.
I was there. First game of the season, I sat through that Dallas game in the rain until the last second ticked off the clock. Sat there last night, me and my brother sat there till the last second ticked, and the Giants were 1-3. You know, I had the second half of the Cardinals game gave me some life. The Niners game went as well as I expected with what was going on. Honestly, I thought we played pretty well given the circumstance. Then you have yesterday against Seattle, who I don't think Seattle, at least for the most part, played well at all. They just ran into the opposite of a buzzsaw. Like, you hear stories about teams running into the hot team and they lose, even though the team they played against might not be better, but they're playing really well at the time. This is like the exact opposite. They ran into like an ice cube because the Giants, it's coaching, it's playing, it's attitude, it's every conceivable thing that you can think of going wrong. Our special teams are horrendous. They're averaging a muff punt per game. Think about that. They had our punt returner went and tried to dive for a ball. He did the fair catch signal for on a punt. He could have let it bounce. You don't have to catch it. If they pin us in the 1, it's not going to change anything if we get it at the 20. You're still going to turn it over on downs. 11 sacks on the day. Now, I don't really agree with how PFF gives sacks and assigns like who the, who the reason was, because anytime a quarterback leaves the pocket, they automatically give any sack to the quarterback, which isn't very fair because a lot of times pressure will flush you out of the pocket and into the arms of a defender. And that happens a lot. Tom Brady's quickest in his career snap to pass was 2.4 seconds. And Tom Brady's known as somebody who gets rid of the ball very quickly. The Giants are averaging 2.2 seconds between snap and pressure. So by the time the ball's in Jones's hand, he's basically going to be flat in his back. Now, Jones played probably his worst game as a pro last night against the Seahawks. It was just atrocious. His decision-making, staring down receivers, not knowing what was going on, not knowing as a veteran at this point when to throw it away, when to run it, and when to just force it to a receiver, throw it downfield when the guys are uncovered. But he's been hit so much that it's almost scared any big play ability away from him. Now, I don't want to say the Giants were figured out from last year because they're not running that same type of offense, but our offensive line just might as well not show up. You'll get the same type of production. People like to compare the Giants to the Texans, right? The Texans lost almost every starter on their offensive line. They have one starter from opening day now left. Their offensive line is still averaging a higher grade overall than the Giants. Their offensive line is still performing much better. So you can't really pin this on anybody with the Giants and what's going wrong, but also cleaning house might not be out of the question. You should have heard the fans sitting behind me in my section screaming to fire Dayball, fire Shane, launch Jones into the sun. All these things, just no fans turn on you quick. And I almost feel bad for Dayball because Dayball is a good coach. And I do think that he would survive this whole Daniel Jones thing. I think him and Shane are on the same page. I think the two of them will get past this and maybe get their own quarterback. The Giants have an easy out after year 2. If their draft pick is low enough this year, they could draft like a Drake May and let him sit a year behind Jones and actually develop, because you have to have Jones on the roster for next year. But it's only a $22 million cap hit if you cut him after next season, as opposed to a $49 million cap hit if you keep him. At this rate, that is a no-brainer, right? So the Giants aren't in a franchise ruining position. A lot of people like to talk about the money he's making, but it really was a 2-year deal with the option to make it 4 if he actually performed. It's an easy out. It's just disappointing and not very good for my mental state watching this team play. And now they have to travel to Miami. Miami might be the first team to hit the century mark scoring this year. And that just won't be the offense. The defense will contribute too. Sad times.
No, Corey, do you think when they get Barkley back, do you think they're going to get better, or do you think
No,
not having him is like hurting them more?
I actually think they'll get worse because Barkley does not play well when he comes back from injury. He plays really poorly if he's not 100%. So I think we'll actually get a little worse because Barkley won't be as explosive as he usually is, and they'll try to force feed him. And Dylan's loving this a little. Deep down, he's loving this.
As an Eagles fan, I'm happy that the Giants are in our vision, because like the Bears, organizational ineptitude. It's not just Daniel Jones, and I want to say this, Daniel, it's not your fault. It's not your fault that you went to a basketball school, played well, and then the Giants took you at 6 when they had no business doing so. It's not your fault that you signed a contract where you were going to make north of $150 million. Everybody else would have done it. It's not your fault that after you signed that contract, the team thought, yeah, let's expand this guy's role. And look how it's worked out. And it's not your fault that offensive line is so horrendous. That's certainly not your fault. For the Giants, man, it's taking off my Eagles hat and putting on an unbiased analyst hat. It's just painful to watch, man. They are just a bad football team. They're going to come in last in the NFC East easily. One of those I told you so moments. The Giants last year was their peak. That was the best you were going to get out of Daniel Jones. That season was the best. And I didn't think it was going to come down this catastrophically. But yeah, man, it's...
You know how many points per game they're averaging against opponents not named the Cardinals?
No.
5.
Do you know if you take out the second half of that Cardinals game, their run differential, point differential on the season is negative 99? They've been outscored by 99 points if you take away the second half of that.
If you take away the second half of that game, they've only scored like 11 points all season.
Yeah.
15 points all season.
One of 2 teams, I believe, did not score a touchdown in the first half yet.
Only one of 2 teams to not have an offensive snap with the lead this season.
I believe it's 104-15 if you take away the second half of that Cardinals game.
Yeah. Because the Giants and Jets are the only teams to not run an offensive play while having the lead at any point this season.
Oh, MetLife. Never changed.
We're in October. The second week of October coming up.
Maybe that cold November rain can help put the flames out, but I doubt it. Let's try and turn things to a positive page. There's a couple of teams like the Giants were last year that are kind of early surprising teams right now. The Houston Texans are 2-2. I think despite the additions of the new coach and CJ Stroud and Will Anderson, no one expected them to be 2-2, 1-3 maybe at most. They had some big wins over Jacksonville and Pittsburgh the last 2 weeks. CJ Stroud was rookie of the month for September. And guys like Tank Dell, Nico Collins are getting it done. As we were talking about, maybe they trade for Devontae Adams on our pre-show. So Houston is surprising. What are they doing right so far?
Coaching.
Yeah, I mean everything, right? Like they had a home run of an offseason. They brought in the right guy in D'Amico Ryans. He's coached up that defense. CJ Stroud, so far, looks like the best quarterback in that draft class. No offense to Anthony Richardson and Culture Report Weekly, but CJ Stroud is the first quarterback in a long, long time to not throw a pick in his first 4 games. I mean, you can look up the statistics; they're all over the place. In terms of just him with all-time greats to a start to a career. Tank Dell, a guy that he said they should get. He's looked like an explosive weapon. Will Anderson on the season has a blocked field goal, a touchdown, and a sack already. And, what an eventful first month for him. The Texans, they got a lot of flack, including from some people on the show for trading that pick next year to Arizona. But when it's all said and done, they may have gotten the best offensive player and the best defensive player at the end of the season. We could see a repeat of the Jets where an offensive rookie of the year and a defensive rookie of the year. Now, obviously, Devin Witherspoon, Jalen Carter on the defensive end will have something to say about that. And we'll see about, of course, BJ Robinson and Puka Nacua, whether they have something to say about that. But the Texans, it was a slam dunk offseason for them.
Without a doubt. Everything you said is just ticking off the boxes in what is right with the Texans. The Texans have just created a offseason masterclass, really a blueprint for every other team that wants to get from the bottom and build up, like what they need to do. Yeah. And that's not necessarily saying that everybody needs to draft, the best offensive and defensive player inside the top 3 to succeed, but you need to have a plan in place and you need to learn how to execute it, because execution is just not something a lot of teams are capable of. They talk all about it, but they just don't do it. So I think having CJ Stroud, knowing he's your guy, letting him even pick out his rookie wide receiver, somebody he's comfortable with, almost like a Dak and Zeke type friendship budding between them. It's really nice to see. Now, I don't think Stroud's going to end up being the best quarterback from this class. I've time and time and said I think it'll be Richardson. But Stroud right now is off to making a really strong case for himself. Now, he might come back down to earth a little bit. Yeah. But even if he does, he's still showing incredible fortitude with what's going on.
He will throw an interception at some point.
He will. He will. He'll have a bad game or 2 or 3. It'll happen, but he needs that to grow too. So the Texans seem like they're finally getting back to a place they were, 10 years ago with prime J.J. Watt, where they're able to make the playoffs pretty consistently.
Yeah, I do want to say, I mean, for the most part, the Texans came in 2002. They've been a pretty well-run organization. Schaub, Arian Foster, Andre Johnson, J.J. Watt, those teams make the playoffs. Then, of course, the teams with Hopkins, Watson, they were in the playoffs. And it really went downhill, of course, when Bill O'Brien took over at GM and traded Hopkins for David Johnson. But then the whole mess of the Deshaun Watson situation. I mean, I don't know many NFL teams that could have turned around any quicker than the Texans did after dealing with their franchise quarterback and having to move him and stuff. And they, of course, got a haul for him. So, we'll see how it pans out for them.
Honestly, it's surprising like how quick the Texans came off that Deshaun Watson situation and actually built a nice team around CJ Stroud to succeed. And you see a lot of teams try to build around their quarterbacks, around their young quarterbacks, and it seems like the Texans actually succeeded in that, where a lot of other teams seem to fail nowadays.
Yeah, and this is a team that does have the Browns' first-round pick this year. They traded theirs to the Cardinals, knowing that they still have another one. So they'll still get another first-round talent on that team.
I mean, honestly, if you're a Texans fan, I mean, I think you have a lot to be excited for, even if you don't necessarily finish on a great note this year. But I mean, I think you have something in the making there with all you young team, you making a lot of good moves. I mean, I think they're going to be really, really good for coming up. I mean, you should be excited for it if you're a Texans fan.
Yeah, we even saw the resilience of the Texans last year. I mean, they only won a handful of games with Lovie Smith, but I mean, I think it almost knocked off Dallas. They took Kansas City to overtime. They beat Jacksonville last year. when Jacksonville was the hottest team in the NFL, and
Didn't they have
the
that win at the end, the last game of the year, to not get the
Yeah.
number 1 pick of one with on a 2-point conversion? That was resilient.
That was, I mean, and listen, it worked out for them. It did. They ended up with CJ Stroud anyway. Instead of probably Bryce Young. I have to wonder if maybe Stroud was the guy all along. Could we be sitting here saying Carolina doesn't have Bryce Young? I mean, we can go into the butterfly effect of that another day, but yeah, Houston. I mean, I'm excited of a decade of Anthony Richardson and CJ Stroud matchups twice a year. I really am. I'm looking forward to it. Another team that I know we were all very low on, but they're 3-1 at the top of the division, Tampa Bay.
Whoa. You mean we were all very low on? When we did the divisional preview, I was low, but right before the start of this season, I said, no, the Buccaneers are this year's Seattle Seahawks. So take me out of that very low. I swapped my opinion on
I'm
them.
gonna have you 1 foot in. You
I have
said
video. I have
yourself that-
video. I have
I
video
know you have
proof.
video, but you say yourself the divisional show. You said it.
Yeah,
But you
well,
walked it
you know,
back,
then
but
I took a
there
deeper
was-
look at the roster before
Yeah.
we did our official predictions. I have reserved the right to change my mind.
The
We
sentiment
had
was
seen
there.
no action. And listen, Baker Mayfield.
Let
Oh,
Baker bake.
Baker is baking, Baker is cooking, Baker is back. You know, you get out of that terrible organization that is the Cleveland Browns. You get out of that terrible organization that's the Carolina Panthers. You find a home with Sean McVay. He shows the little spark that you got. You get a shot in Tampa Bay, and you don't look back. I mean, the weapons were there. Evans, Godwin. You know, I don't think Rashid White's very good, but some people like him, so I'll throw him in there. A solid O-line and a defense that's got players on it. In a division that's very winnable, I think the Buccaneers take the division. I do. I'll plant the flag on that 1 month into the season.
I gotta, piggyback onto Dylan and piling onto Ryan about his wildly mischaracteristic take of what we all were saying. Because we also all said that the Bucks could be good if Baker Mayfield performed well, and we all said it hinges on him. So we did say they were going to be bad, but with that caveat of let Baker bake, right? And I'm really happy for him. He deserved it. I loved him coming out of college. He really was the guy that saved the whole Browns franchise, and they owe him everything. Everything that they are or ever will be belongs to Baker Mayfield for getting them out of that deep, dark hole. And Baker, he's just a fun guy to watch succeed. People thought they were going to trade Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and, they're both going to, Evans just might get his next, another 1,000-yard season to continue his all-time streak. They look like a fun team, and quite frankly, I don't think any other team in that division has shown you enough to say that they will overtake Tampa. What has Carolina shown you other than just continuous losing? What has Atlanta shown you other than the ineptitude and inability to actually utilize their players? What about the Saints? What are they? They're not playing well. Chris Olave, 4 weeks into the year, doesn't even have a touchdown. He's your best playmaker.
Yeah, and they just got rocked by the Buccaneers
Yeah.
without Mike Evans out there for most of the game.
Did you guys see the stat with Alvin Kamara?
Yeah, he was on my
He-
fantasy team in a PPR league, so
Me too.
them 13 catches were just fine for me, but
Me
that's
too.
33 receiving yards was the worst. The least before that was 71 with that many catches.
Think about that. The record went from 13 catches, 74 yards to 13 catches, 33 yards. Just insanity.
About like what 1.3 yard per catch.
Terrible efficiency, but it worked for him.
Worked for fantasy. Didn't work for the
Saints.
didn't work for the Saints.
Yeah, I had a lot.
You're not
going to
win with inefficiency like
with
that.
A gentleman's goose egg. The one catch.
But the Bucks really are just going to have to run away with this division. And who knows, maybe they can make some noise in the NFC.
I don't have really much more to say. I mean, I think we pretty much said it all. I mean, we just didn't think Baker Mayfield was going to be this good. And if
Yeah.
he keeps staying this good, relies on Godwin and Evans, I mean, probably can win a division.
I guess you could say that some people wrote him off, but he didn't write back.
Ooh.
Yeah, I heard that one before. Yeah, I mean, you guys absolutely all you take a victory lap around me because I had the Panthers poised for big things this year, and that is not
I also did.
that's
I
not
did.
panning out too well. But let's go to outsiders of the week, shining the spotlight on the guys that aren't household names that help their teams win big this week. To get started, for me, Dallas corner, Deron Bland, buried behind the depth chart of Trevon Diggs and Stephon Gilmore, who came over in a trade this offseason. I didn't realize this. Since he came into the league, he's a second-year player, so came in last year, 2022, leads the league in interceptions. He has 8 of them now, including 2 this past week, 1 return for a touchdown. As someone with the Dallas defense on my fantasy team, I appreciate that very much. Deron Bland definitely helped mitigating the loss of Trevon Diggs for that vaunted Dallas defense.
Yeah, I'll keep mine short and sweet for Corey's mental health. I don't think this guy will be able to be an outsider for much longer. Devin Witherspoon, I mean, the rookie corner for Seattle had the 97-yard pick six, of course, but this guy's making tackles all over the field. Just an absolute beast last night for Seattle. They may have found their next great corner in Witherspoon.
I'm going to backtrack a little bit. We were talking Bucks and Baker, and maybe Baker found his new favorite target in Devin Tompkins. Wide receiver, played a lot of snaps in wake of Mike Evans, not playing as much. 4 receptions on 4 targets for 45 yards and a touchdown. Pretty good numbers from a guy that I didn't hear of before this week. Just somebody who, you might look at as being a good third option on that offense.
My outsider of the week is Jaleel McLaughlin, undrafted rookie running back for the Denver Broncos. He kind of took over their backfield this week. Most rushing yards on the team this week, 72 yards, 32 yards receiving, 1 touchdown. And honestly, I think he might end up being their starting running back now. And if you need a guy in fantasy, I think this is a guy to pick up.
Rip Javante.
He'll be fine. It's minor.
It's minor.
Do you guys see that not Peyton Hill, was it Lindsey was getting dragged by the Broncos on Twitter?
Lindsey.
Philip Lindsey was getting dragged. Because he grew up in Denver as a Broncos fan, right? So he was commenting on them, and a bunch of the players started tweeting back at him, "Glad you can watch it from home."
I felt that one. All right, looking ahead to week 5. A couple of teams went by, like I said earlier. The Browns, the Chargers, the Seahawks, and the Bucks all enjoying an early week off, but there's still some enticing matchups for us to watch as viewers. Obviously, the low-hanging fruit, Dallas going to San Francisco, facing the team that ended their playoff run these past 2 seasons, once at home, once on the road. I mean, we're just going to eat good for Sunday Night Football for sure this week. It'll be just efficient offenses, 2 of the best defenses. Don't make that face. Yeah, they dropped the ball in Arizona, but
I don't think it's going to be an efficient offensive game.
well, yeah, but with these defenses, but
right.
thus far, the offense is playing pretty well. But I'm also excited to see Houston and Atlanta. These are 2-2 teams kind of figuring themselves out. Will Houston stay on their hot streak? Atlanta, they dropped 2 in a row after starting 2-0. So this is starting to kind of get to that make it or break it point. We're going to find out who the contenders are, who the pretenders are. This is going to be a very deciding matchup. But what games are you guys looking forward to?
Yeah, Ryan, you picked a battle of 2 mid quarterbacks in Brock Purdy and Dak Prescott. I'll take a battle of 2 top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. Overseas in London, Josh Allen travels to the Prince, Trevor Lawrence's homeland, where the Jaguars have been now for 10 days. So the time advantage, sleep, home field, it'll be on their side, despite it being a Buffalo home game. Wink, wink. Great work there from the Jaguars. Very pristine. I think the Jaguars are going to pull out a win here. I think the Bills are riding high from that win versus Miami. Jaguars have been there, so I'm excited to see these guys square up. And listen, if I got to wake up at 9:30 in the morning for a football game, Bills Jags, that's the one to be up for.
I'm taking a fun one. We might have thought this was a toilet bowl last week, but these teams showed some life. Taking Mr. Unlimited versus Zach the MILF Hunter. Broncos Jets. I think it's going to be an electric matchup because I am solely expecting Zach to redo what he did against the Chiefs. He may have just put it all together finally out of nowhere. He looked amazing, and the Jets deserve their flowers. Although they also did deserve to get that defensive holding call on them, and also that no call with the hold on the offense when Mahomes ran those 22 yards. Those were both the correct calls. But they deserve their flowers in playing really well against the Chiefs. And honestly, the Broncos had to put it together at some point. Russ is looking great. This is going to be a fun matchup.
Jets, Jets.
Let's ride.
I'm going with a rivalry game. I've got the Ravens traveling up to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. The Ravens have been playing really good this year. They've been doing really good. Steelers not so much. Doing really got blown out by the Texans last week. Mike Tomlin said there's going to be changes made. So I guess we'll see. We'll see if those changes that they're making can be enough to win against the Ravens here.
No one's gonna tune in for Bears Commanders on Thursday night.
I
My
am
Thursday night's booked.
I have
That's a
so I have Mike Evans in my big league, and I have Jahan Dotson on my bench, and he's like technically the best option for me to play, but I almost don't want to play him just so I don't have to watch that game.
I don't blame you. Yeah, we're
There's baseball playoffs that night, Ryan.
maybe I'll start watching baseball then.
Yeah, maybe I will watch the game.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, that's gonna do it for today's show. Thank you for joining us again. Make your picks, place your bets. Join us next week when we talk about week 5 and look ahead to week 6. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Outsider Sports Football Podcast.